Have you ever been called distant, cold, or weird just because you prefer being alone instead of going to parties? What if the problem isn't you, but how people misunderstand you? What if your need for space isn't a flaw, but a signal? A signal that your mind works differently, and maybe more deeply than most people realize. Society keeps telling us something very clear. The more social you are, the happier you'll be. If you talk more, go out more, and know more people, and suddenly you're seen as doing well. But this video isn't for that crowd. This video is for people who feel drained after social events, for people who need quiet, just to breathe, for people who've secretly wondered, is something wrong with me? Why do I feel different from everyone else? Watch until the end, because you might realize something important. Loving solitude isn't a weakness. It might actually be your psychological advantage. Picture this. After a long day, some people want to go out, grab drinks, and talk late into the night. You, on the other hand, just want to go home, close the door, sit in silence, maybe read, maybe listen to music, maybe just lie there and let your mind slow down. Not because you hate people, not because you're angry, not because you're antisocial, but because you need to recharge. Psychology calls this being introverted. But introverted doesn't mean shy. It doesn't mean awkward. And it definitely doesn't mean bad at talking. Many people who prefer being alone communicate just fine. They just don't talk for the sake of talking. They don't fill silence just to avoid it. Their brains process information more deeply. They think before they speak. They reflect before they react. For them, one meaningful conversation matters more than 10 small talk ones. One real connection matters more than a room full of noise. Studies show that introverted brains are more sensitive to dopamine, the chemical linked to stimulation and excitement. In simple terms, too much noise, too many people, too much interaction, it drains them fast. While others feel energized by crowds, someone who prefers solitude feels their battery slowly dropping, minute by minute, conversation by conversation. And once that battery hits zero, they don't just feel tired, they feel mentally exhausted. Here's where things get difficult. The world isn't built for people like this. Schools reward students who speak up the most. Workplaces praise those who are loud, outgoing, and great at networking. Leadership is often confused with being the most visible person in the room. Relationships often confuse caring with showing up all the time. If you're not always present, always available, always responding, people assume you don't care. So people who enjoy being alone get labeled distant, hard to read, arrogant, cold, unfriendly. And after hearing it enough times, they start believing it. They force themselves to go out more, force themselves to talk more, force themselves to be louder, brighter, more normal. They push past their limits, ignore their needs, silence their instincts, and the result is almost always the same: burnout, emotional fatigue, a constant feeling of being on with no place to turn off. But here's the part people rarely mention. Those who prefer solitude often have powerful strengths. They observe more. They notice details others miss. They read between the lines. They feel the mood of a room before a word is spoken. They listen more than they speak. And when they speak, it usually matters. They think before they act. They don't rush decisions. They don't chase attention. They don't need constant validation. And when they connect with someone, the bond is usually deep, not surface level, not casual, not just to pass time, but real, thoughtful, intentional. Many great scientists, writers, artists, philosophers, and thinkers throughout history needed long periods of solitude, not because they hated society, but because that's where their minds worked best. Silence is where they hear themselves. Stillness is where ideas grow. Solitude is where they reconnect with who they are, without noise, without pressure, without performance. This is the most important part. Preferring to be alone is not the same as being lonely. Loneliness hurts. It feels empty. It feels unwanted. Being alone for many people feels safe. It feels calm. It feels grounding. When they're alone, they sort through their thoughts. They reset emotionally. They recharge mentally. It's like cleaning a room. If people keep walking in, you never finish cleaning. What society calls a problem in these people is actually a strength once they stop trying to fix themselves. Once they stop apologizing for who they are. Once they stop performing for approval. Once they start respecting their own energy. Not everyone needs a stage. Some people shine in quiet. Some people lead through depth, not volume. Some people change the world without ever raising their voice. If you're someone who prefers solitude, remember this. You're not broken. You're not weird. You're not missing something. You're just wired differently. The world needs both noise and silence, both crowds and corners, both voices and pauses. And sometimes, the most important ideas, the deepest insights, and the strongest versions of ourselves are born when no one else is around. If this message felt familiar to you, know that you're not alone. Some people feel deeply, think quietly, and need space to recharge. And that is not a weakness. It's simply a different way of being. If this video helped you feel understood, please give it a like. It helps this message reach others who might need it just as much. You can share it with someone who prefers quiet or someone who feels misunderstood. And if you want more content like this about psychology, self-understanding, and inner balance, consider subscribing. No pressure, just a quiet invitation. Because sometimes the most meaningful connections are built without noise, without rushing, and without trying to be someone else. Thank you for being here, in your own way,